For argument's sake, there was a standing order, which was a policy guideline back in the days, which was saying, by mere skin color, a white man becomes your superior, irrespective of your rank, irrespective of your job knowledge, irrespective of your academic qualifications. You have to take that because it was the order of the day. Whilst I was almost on the verge of doing a grand opening of the guest house, that is when my former colleagues pounced on me and they jailed me. In prison, it was very difficult. It was a terrible experience in the sense, remember, I was coming from the police background, and every criminal knew me. Every single person in the Republic of South Africa knew who Vincent Mdunge was.
Very good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I don't know what time of day it is to you, but welcome to another episode of Highly Favored. My name is Pastor Noxy Williams, and I will be your host for today. Yes, I know that for sure you're waiting for Lex Lafoya, but don't you worry, you are still in good hands with me. Highly Favored. Oh, what a powerful name. You know, when I think of Highly Favored, I think of how Elizabeth was meeting with Mary, the greeting. You know, something happened. There's something happens when favor is around. And as we're talking about the subject of Highly Favored, I just wanted to say, just hang there. You're going to see the guest that we have today. Now, before I start with the guest, I just want to read a few bio of who this guest is. It is a man that I highly respect, a man that is favored by God, a man that is used by God in business with people. He has achieved so much. He is one of my role models, to say. Okay, let me just go through the bio so that you can see what I'm talking about. It speaks for itself. It speaks volume. I can guarantee you that. Okay, his bio. Right, his name is Vincent Mdunge, Mr. Vincent Mdunge. He was born in a deep rural community of Emapepetweni in Muku. I hope I said it right, forgive me, in KZN in 1965. After he matriculated, he became a qualified conventioner, is that how you say it, and specialized in baking birthday cakes, wedding cakes, biscuits, and a variety of special cakes. After joining the South African Police Service in 1987, he worked at Pinetown Police Station and later progressed in provincial level as public order police, management services, communication services for SAPO, and later served as a provincial chairperson of SAPO. Mr. Vincent Mdunge has the following qualifications. He has a national diploma in police administration. He has an international diploma in negotiation skills through the International School of Academy based in USA. After resigning from the South African Police Services in 2013, he ventured into opening his own businesses. He opened Mthethweni Legal Consultancy, Amadunge Security, owned by his son Mfundo. He has a guest house in Molweni. He has a trucking distribution. He is interested in cattle farming and is very much involved in youth development. Please, ladies and gentlemen, help me to welcome and introduce to you Mr. Vincent Mdunge.
Thank you very much, Pastor Noxy, for having me. Greetings to all the viewers of this special program, Highly Favored. Of course, one is really favored by merely conforming part of this, program of its nature. Indeed, I come from a very deep rural community in Emapepeteni, which is on the outskirts of Ndu. Basically, that is where one was born, that is where one was raised, and of course, as life progressed, I'm born in a family of 10, which is quite a massive family. From two parents, for argument's sake, and we are 5 brothers, 5 sisters, and I'm the 3rd youngest in the family. Basically, my dad passed on at my very young age. I must have been in grade 3 at the time in the current phenomenon that was Standard 1 back in the days. That was in the year 1976. We were then left with a mother who was unemployed, and she had to put things together to raise us and make us who we are today, which was quite a strain. We therefore descended to Mpumalanga, Hammersdale. That is where I started my high school. And I remember quite sincerely you raised an issue of, the confectionery part of it when you spoke of my profile. Basically, how the whole confectionery started was miraculous in the sense that when I was at school, I had to assist and help my mother to do ends meet to sustain ourselves and the other siblings. I had to leave school at 3 o'clock, go to a bakery that was in the local community in Hammersdale in Unit 6. It was back in the days. When it started off, it was known as AAA, and subsequently it then changed into the current Albany bakery that we know of today. That is how it started off. At that stage, I could only bake bread, buns and few elements of cakes here, there and there. Up until when I matriculated. Immediately after matric, one had to assume, higher learning endeavors, going to the university, and it was an impossibility because of the circumstances that we were faced with at the time. The only person that we could look up to was my mom, who was equally unemployed, and for that reason it became a crisis. Then I had to do odd jobs after school. I remember quite sincerely when they picked me up as an employee at AAA. I was paid 3 rands for 12 hours over a night. That was back between 1985 and 1986. It was money at the time. It was good money at the time. It had value. You could actually assist here, there and there, buy food, and sustain my other study materials and the like. So it worked out for me. But how the whole thing changed was after my matriculation in 1985, when I switched over to Hammersdale. That is when I was then identified by another businessman who owned shopping complexes and supermarkets, the works, you name it. Miraculously, somehow, he identified a talent into me, and he said to me, "You are a bakerman." Not knowing where I was coming from, and he showed me the bakery. He gave me samples of cakes, and he said to me, here is the equipment. Try this, try that, try that, and let's see what the outcome of it. Basically, that is how, and that is when my baking qualification came into play. Up until when he realized that this man is in it, and then he sent me to a short course somewhere in Durban in Ngubane Road. It took me about 6 weeks to complete that course. Then I was put into a full-time job at the bakery. I mastered the craft. You name the cake, whether you talk about biscuits, melting moments, you talk about ordinary cakes, birthday cakes, wedding cakes, whether it's to be iced on fresh cream, whether it is to be iced on buttercream or even plastic icing. I could do decorations. I could do all sort of shapes of cakes. You put a boat in front of me. I will design a cake to suit the look of the boat itself. You want a car. Out of a cake, I will decorate and a makeup of a car of your own choice. Basically, whilst I was confined into that environment, then I applied in the police.
Sorry, just before we get to the police,
yes.
I want to take your journey step by step.
Yes.
So what got you into actually baking? It wasn't by choice. It was a means of survival, if I'm hearing you correctly. Because as you're explaining, you went into actually selling cakes because you are trying to help the situation at home, your mom.
Absolutely.
Yes. So out of that hardship, it came a talent. It came a form of another business. If I see, and I'm trying to connect this to our topic, Highly Favored, the podcast.
Correct.
Even since at a young age, I see the favor of God upon your life, that whatever the devil meant for harm, God saw that as, no, I'm training this young man, my son, to be a businessman. So it was a form of business, am I correct? When you started the baking, yes, you were trying to make ends meet, but now the talent that you have, the craft, you can actually, it's a business all on its own.
Absolutely, it is. Those who command the language very well will tell you that the Almighty does not make mistakes,
yes.
But He makes masterpieces.
Yes.
He raised me from nowhere up to the highest of the echelons. At the time, I took baking as a job. I took it as a duty and a responsibility that I had to carry out to support the family and to get ends meet, not only for myself, but for my other siblings and for my mother in particular. And seemingly, we were able to self-sustain. And as we progressed, I then acquired and accomplished a qualification out of that situation, which was a very short course. A 6 weeks course is really neither here nor there. But then again, I started believing in myself. I started realizing that, I am capable. That is when I was then snatched by another prospective businessman who then saw what I could display, what I could do in baking. And he said, listen, we'll double your salary. Come join us. And I joined their company. They were called the Little Chef at the time. They were based somewhere in Ngubane Road. Whilst I was working with them, that is when another dimension of calling came into play. That is when I applied in the South African Police Service in 1987. Surprisingly and unexpectedly.
But what made you shift, from bakery and to the police, I'd say maybe like a chef to a police officer. What made you such transition in your life?
Well, there were many drives to that passion. Initially, you would, admire the officers neatly dressed in their uniform, carrying guns and all the kind of things, and the level of discipline that they displayed, the level of respect that they would have earned in the general community. All those were the drivers towards the new passion, which then took a conversion of me from the confectionery part of it right up to the policing. Basically, that is how I started off in the police back in 1987.
Discipline.
Discipline,
Yes,
self-discipline.
okay.
When I then went through the training program in Hammanskraal, it was a complete different ball game, because how they instill discipline into you is not what we see happening today. Discipline was forced into us, and when I mastered the craft of self-discipline and I look at the normal day-to-day situation of today's life, it reminds me of the then old apartheid policing, where every single young white male above the age of 16, before you go to the university or college, you would then be called in to go and do a service to the country and to the community, which would have meant you would then go to the SAPS training program, do your 4 years service, community service, or alternatively you go to the SANDF, the army, where you do your 2 years. You would then be taught on 3 pillars. One of those pillars would have been self-discipline, so that you become a person that is going to support and love the country. And the second pillar was premised on, patronage, to where you are taught to love and to die for your country. And thirdly, you would then be trained on manipulating and handling firearms. You would be taught to operate all forms of guns, which we don't see today, from a handgun to a shotgun to a rifle to stoppers, the works, you name it, which is a gap that we overlooked when we took over in the new dispensation. Fortunately, I've been favored in that I have seen the ugly part of the apartheid regime. I've served that government, and when we transited into the new dispensation, I was equally part of that shift, which we then lack today. And I always say there could have been, things that we would not have aborted from the apartheid regime that could have sustained our future. Currently, we have our borders wide open. We have influx of drugs that are coming into our communities. We have abandoned our children. We do no longer take them through the similar programs. Instead, we feed them with wunga, we feed them with drugs, and that was the beginning of the lawlessness in the country. That is where we started seeing all forms of criminality, whether we talk conduct crimes. Conduct crimes relates to Schedule between Schedule 5 and Schedule 6 offenses such as rape cases, murder, armed robbery with aggravating circumstances, you name it. All those things emerge simply because we allowed our borders to be opened and we left our youth in abeyance. And those are the contributing factors, which is quite difficult for us to recover from that situation now up to the point where we are.
Okay, so from Mr. Mdunge, from the police, you mentioned that you learned self-discipline.
Absolutely.
How relevant is self-discipline as a businessman? How relevant, how important is self-discipline as a businessman? Now, I know you've got a variety of businesses that are under your wing, and some businesses are under your son. We're still going to touch that on your family life. But I just want to see, as a child of God, number one, and also as a businessman, how important is self-discipline? And do you actually thank God for the opportunity for putting you in that discipline in for life principles, and also as a man of God also?
Absolutely. Self-discipline is a life phenomena that is indispensable, that you cannot do without. It was instilled into me in a very hard way in the police training in Hammanskraal. I went to various other academies, at the time before I was even deployed to the outskirts of the other countries to do peacekeeping missions. Self-discipline becomes a must. You would understand that you will have to work within the parameters of the law. In as much as I would be saying perhaps that is another page that we need to look at differently, because even until today we are still governed by the old or the then Roman Dutch law. Which is written in a foreign language, and it is translated into Afrikaans, and from Afrikaans it is further translated into English, and there's nothing on the indigenous languages, which then puts us as African people on the back foot on issues of self-defense, on issues of expressing ourselves and the likes. So when you say self-discipline, there is a lot that you take out of the self-discipline that was instilled from the policing point of view into the business. In policing, you've got to understand the laws of the land, your Law of Criminal Procedure Act, your statutory law, your common law, and over and above your policy framework. Back in the days, in our time, policy guidelines were called the standing orders. Standing orders were very strange rules that required you to understand as to who you are and manage your discipline, even if it means you disagree with certain things. For argument's sake, there was a standing order, which was a policy guideline back in the days, which was saying, by mere skin color, a white man becomes your superior, irrespective of your rank, irrespective of your job knowledge, irrespective of your academic qualifications.
And you had to take that.
You have to take that because it was the order of the day. But seemingly, it worked in our favor as we progressed through policing, in that we could see the bad part of it, and ironically, on the other side of a flip coin, we could also realize the good part of it. transition into a business for an entrepreneur, for a business person to succeed.
Yeah.
You've got to be self-disciplined. You've got to be compliant with the rules and regulations of the game, which is a transition from standing orders, the laws of the land and the likes, into a business practice, which simply tells you that there's got to be compliances that you adhere to. For you to start a business, it's got to be registered somewhere.
Yes. Yeah.
You've got to be compliant with the South African Revenue Services, SARS. You've got to be on the government central database. You've got to establish yourself. You have to raise money to start off your business and take it off the ground. No matter how small you start, God will always pave and direct you to a right perspective where you become a successful entrepreneur. Perhaps my first business after resigning from the police in 2013 was the legal consultancy company, because that is something that I had known better when I mastered the craft of policing, because the laws of the land are taught and instilled into you. You apply it on daily basis in terms of your daily routine. And mind you, I served in the police for well over 27 years, and having resigned in 2013, I ventured into the legal consultancy. That is when I registered M20 Legal Consultancy, which does exactly what LIPCO law for all does, and all these other independent enterprises. What we do in the business, I'm not a lawyer by profession, but I have clients that subscribes to the business. I also have lawyers that subscribes into my business, and when there are matters that are to be taken to a court of law, I already have a database. I simply pick up a relevant lawyer and assign to a client. Clients contribute gradually on monthly basis, on the basis of monthly premiums, and that becomes they are resolute when they find themselves in an encounter, be it labor, be it criminal, be it civil, because you would find odd matters that are to go through a civil court, some through a criminal court, and vice versa. The Department of Labor and what have you. Basically, those are the transitions that you look at when you look back in the policing experience and in the business sector. When that business was progressing, another thought came to say, perhaps my strengths are more into policing, even in as much as I'm out of policing. Let me start something else.
That's when you opened the security.
That is when I opened Mdunge Security and Private Investigation, because that is what I know better. Eventually, I had an encounter, in the sense that I was criminally charged, and with a criminal record, you could no longer participate in the security industry. And then I moved over that business to part of it to my daughter to manage. But unfortunately, my daughter was also in the system. She was employed by the South African Police Service. Part of the compliance is that you've got to be on the database, and the policy dictate terms that you cannot do certain businesses or venture into certain businesses because of the conflict of interest.
Then you moved to your son.
I moved it over to my son, who is the current sitting director now. And it's working like a bomb. We do major investigations. Part of the investigation that we started off with when we established the business was the Senzo Meyiwa case itself, back in the years, because the family could recognize the contribution that one would have made in the police. And when one had ventured, into a private business, they had interest. And we went to Joburg. We did a bit of investigation, and unfortunately, that is a case that is currently sitting in a court of law. One would not want to go too much into merits because the matter is already before the court of law.
Just basically, to go back, sorry to interrupt. You made a decision.
Correct.
After you mentioned that you had to move your company to your daughter.
Correct.
Because of criminal allegations towards yourself.
Yes.
But I just want to, what made you not to quit? Yes, there were allegations of criminal, but what made you not to say, you know what, I'm giving this whole business thing? Because I see, reading your bio, you didn't stop there as a PI. You carried on and you opened other businesses. That stumbling block in your life, it didn't make you say, you know what, I'm just giving up. This is what happened to my life now. I've got a criminal record. I'm just stopping everything. What's my question to you, Mr. Mdunge? What made you to say, you know what, life goes on. I can hand this to my next generation, and I'm still going to carry on and do other businesses. What is that? What is that? I want to know, what is that thing that made you not to quit?
Well, look, we serve an amazing God. He is a God of miracles and wonders. I think self-belief, hope, were the driving force to say, I can do more. You cannot succumb to circumstances and allow people to drag you down. There are certain things that people can take out of you, but there are also certain things that are God-given that can never be taken away from you by anybody, even if they so desire. Financially, I was drained, right up to nothing, because I had to use a bits and pieces of every penny that I would have earned in my other businesses to defend this case. The justice system, unfortunately, is structured such that they would drain you financially first before they prosecute you in a court of law when you become defenseless. When I realized that they were coming in vengeance and they wanted to sink the ship, then I prayed to the Almighty. I said, God, guide me, help me through. Let me understand. Let me fight this battle if I have to fight it. But seemingly it is no longer mine. Let my fate take me to wherever it takes me. If they take me to jail, if they strip me of my finances, they will not take the wisdom that is God-given, that is inside me. Then the little money that I have, I did not spend it too much to defend the case. I bought a piece of land in Molweni. Then
the guest house.
That is when the guest house came about. We got it registered. Whilst I was almost on the verge of doing a grand opening of the guest house. That is when my former colleagues pounced on me and they jailed me. In prison, it was very difficult. It was a terrible experience in the sense, remember, I was coming from the police background, and every criminal knew me. Every single person in the Republic of South Africa knew who Vincent Mdunge was. And that is how tormenting it was. When I arrived in prison, my first experience was that the inmates summoned me to a meeting. A meeting that I did not understand. Remember, I had arrived a night before, and exactly the next day, I've got to face a mob of about 4,000 inmates at Medium B.
It's like now, it's like they're saying now, they're calling the shots now. It's like they're saying that's in their minds.
Well, in my mind, that was the gesture, that was the feeling, that was those were the fears that I had. But hence I've said the God that we serve is a God of miracles and wonders. When I got to that meeting, one inmate who was in charge of the so-called number stood up and he said, colleagues, this meeting is going to take nothing more than 2 minutes. And imagine we had well over 4,000 inmates at Medium B. Here am I. The meeting is going to take 2 minutes because it's not a normal situation. The meetings in prison are disallowed. Therefore, they had to use the most. And I said to myself, I'm going to be crucified.
And the meeting is about you here.
The meeting is about me.
Hey.
And one man stood up and he said, we are here to tell you that Vincent Mdunge is here. He's here to deal with his own matters and not anybody else's matters. Dare you touch him? Whoever so touch him would have, touched the nerve of the ringleaders. Immediately, he said the meeting. He called the meeting off, and he said the meeting is done.
You know what this reminds me of?
Yes.
Remember Daniel in the lion's den?
Oh my word!
It's just, your story reminded me of that.
When King
Nebuchadnezzar
had put a seal over the lion's den, and knowing that he was going to be chastised, he was going to be eaten up, and he had given up on him, and he could not sleep. The next morning
he came down. Was your God able?
He lifted up the seal and he said, he shouted, he called him by name. Daniel, did your own God serve you and protect you? And Daniel said,
long live, O King.
Oh my word, my word. That was a revelation at the time. Then when I came out of prison, then I started, reorganizing myself, educating the youth on business prospects, teaching them compliances, taking them through various training programs out of nothing, but at the same time I was sustaining my own other businesses. Then I ended up getting some very good awards. We did some work for some state-owned entities, and we did very well. And of course, we were supported by the private sector. We could do investigations. I remember one investigation was at the spa in Kloof. As we were assigned to that investigation at Spa was experiencing a difficulty in that they were not making profit margins on their meat products, and they wondered. They were not too sure as to where the money was going to, and they called upon our company. They said, Vincent Mdunge, come and assist us. We are buying carcasses of sheep. It goes through the normal, value chain inside the shop, and customers are buying, but we are not seeing profit, and we don't know what is happening. When we undertook that project, the view was that perhaps it could be related to shopliftings, perhaps it could be the staff that are stealing from them or what have you. But ironically, I had said to them, give me your old footages. Let me have a look at them as to how you receive your carcasses, how you weigh them, how you place them in the cold rooms, and how then does it go to the shelf, from the shelf, how does it get to the tills. I looked at those video footages. Something strange, something very odd came up. The delivery people would bring in carcasses on a truck. They would take them inside the carcasses on batches of 5 into a weighing scale. When it is on the scale, the checker would come and do the verification and approve. Then the same delivery people would take the carcasses from the scale to the cold room. But when they do that, they would take at least 2 carcasses on the batch of 5 into the cold room and leave the other 3 on the scale. And they go out to the truck to pick up the other 2.
They are stealing.
Indirectly, they are stealing. They would hitch it up on the scale and call the checker again, because remember, the checker is assigned to various activities in the shop. Essentially what they are stealing stays in the truck. It does not even get to the shop, and that is where the profit was going. And that is how we concluded that investigation. We were able to successfully charge those culprits, and they were then
this
taken
is through which company, the investigation?
Mdunge Security and Private Investigation. That was a second subsequent investigation after the Senzo Meyiwa investigation case. We then have another company called Ndu, which is also owned by my son. In that company, he does workwear, he does safety gear, he has supplied, Transnet, National Transnet, National Port Authority, TNPA, pipeline, you name it. I've never imagined myself, in doing anything on the work gear, but somehow we found ourselves in there. He then ventured into construction. He's on civil construction work currently. Basically, we then decided, let us not be selfish. Let us not be self-enriching independently on our own. Let's try and assist other people. Let them be beneficiaries of these accomplishments. And that is when we started educating. That is when we started, training the younger generations. We are making inroads in small numbers, but of course, the level of impact that we are making currently is amazing. Basically, that is what we do in the business world currently.
So in the youth development, you said you don't want to be selfish in this business. So my question is, how are you involved in the youth of today? How you mentioned trainings that you do, undergo. What types of trainings do you actually train the youth on? Is it only on business, or is it also about life in general through your experience? Basically, what trainings do you actually do for the youth?
Essentially, good citizenry is informed by a good upbringing of the younger ones. We started off a program that was initiated by government. It was called Take a Girl Child to Work. I took the liking on the program. we started absorbing young girls who would have matriculated, place them in strategic areas for them to master the craft, those that could not go
Like
to
work
the
placement.
universities, work placement, let them do INSERV, and when they become promising, we then request the human resource management to absorb them into the program. Of course, there would have been a provision of stipends that they could benefit to sustain, to travel from home to work. But then again, I realized that it was not good enough. To take a girl child to work. What are we saying to the boy child? And it started eating me again to say, if we leave this boy child in abeyance, are we not creating a society where these young boys will become bullies, where these boys will come and contribute immensely on the gender-based violence cases and the likes? Then I said, no, let's change the whole thing. Let us not take the girl child to work. Let us take a child to work, which is inclusive of both the girl and the boy, so that the equilibrium is more in balanced. I think those that was just one leg of the training. On the other training programs, we train them on basic security gradings, starting from grade E, grade D, grade C, grade B, grade A. When they qualify, you know that they are not going to be to find themselves wanting. They are going to be employable because you would have taken them through SIRA. For their qualifications, to be inclusive on their systems. Once they are issued with SIRA certificates, they are qualified security guards, you monitor them. Basically, that is what we have been doing from the security point of view. On bakery, we simply take them through our guest house. At our guest house, we have equipment, we have a shisanyama within the guest house itself. We take them through the normal customer care services, teach them basic skills that does not require much of your academic qualifications, but at least God gave you hands, body limbs, so use those body limbs. To mold and to bake cakes, you don't necessarily need machinery per se, but of course they have an advantage because we have invested money on purchasing such equipment and which becomes user friendly. Computer skills, we teach them all those enabling skills. Basically, there is a lot that we still want to do. I remember back in the days when I was still in government, I was then approached by a group of learners from the Durban University of Technology. They wanted to go to prison and do a research. But then again, I said, where do I fit in? Go and do your research. It does not concern me. It's outside the scope of my mandate. It's outside, They insisted. They said, no, but Babu Mdunge, we want you to be part of it. I remember quite sincerely at the time we were preparing to host the FIFA World Cup as a country, and there were controversies because people were raising various issues to say safety issues. When you come to South Africa, you will find a giraffe at the backyard, and every 100 meters a person gets stabbed in South Africa. That was quite a hype, which then ended up calling for the then Minister of Police to say, let us host a state of readiness. I was busy with those arrangements when these kids approached me. And when they narrated their story, it was, a very painful story because there are young kids that are raised and born in prison, when the mothers get convicted whilst in a highly stage of pregnancy, and they give birth in prison, those kids may not have seen the grass in their lives. They then started developing phobia to touching grass. Then we said, "No, it's fine. This is a bit critical. Let us identify possible, sponsors to, invest into this project." And it became an amazing project. We had to redesign the whole prison, the mother and child facility in prison. These guys are highly talented. They
Painting
were doing
and everything.
interior design,
Wow.
painting, creating, an environment that would have been enabling like a genuine home environment. We ended up deciding to take them out for a walk outside the holding cells, and
Sure.
it is tormenting. In that when they looked up the sky, they have never seen the sky. They started developing phobia, and I said, this is not normal. It is not that they are there simply because
It's not their fault.
It's not their fault.
Yes.
But the reality is that when the mother is confined and there's no one else to take over those young ones, what do? They've got to grow in there up until maybe an age of 7, up until they are placed elsewhere.
Yeah.
But then again, how do you take that phobia
Yes.
of looking at the sky and seeing something strange? When they saw a fleet of cars outside, it was a big deal for them to
Sure.
comprehend.
And these things we take so lightly.
It's
Yeah.
torture. It's torture to touch the Mother Earth, just the soil. It was an amazing experience for those young ones. We ended up painting the roof, making it blue like a sky, so that at least they are familiar with the blue color. We then came up with floor mats that are green to resemble the grass, so that at least they can adapt. And I realized, had I not participated in this program, I would not have known these things, and I would not have been able to persuade the sponsors and the donors to contribute toward this venture. It was an amazing success. Basically, all I'm saying, those that command the language very well would tell you, as and when you climb the ladder, greet all the people that you come across, for you may meet them on your way down. And I've seen it in my own self. Through such people that I would have met in danger and in a area of nowhere. Those are the people that praise for you when you experience the difficulties and the challenges of life. And those are the people that cushion you so that at least you don't fall hard on the ground and feel the hardness of the soil. Those were the experiences that I've had.
So basically, umuntu ngabantu.
Absolutely.
There's a saying that says that umuntu ngabantu.
Absolutely.
And hearing your story, Mr. Mdunge, I'm also reminded another verse in the Bible. I'm just making references to the Bible because that is our language.
Absolutely.
When it says that Jabez prayed,
Yes.
he said, "Oh, that you may bless me indeed,
Amen.
and enlarge my territory, that I may not cause pain." And the Bible says, and God answered what he had prayed for. So when I'm listening to your testament, your story, you are blessed to be a blessing. You're not blessed for yourself or your children, but you are blessed to be a blessing to so many of us. And also, can I also testify also in my life? I asked Mr. Mdunge when I was doing last year, I was doing an award ceremony. I was doing trainings for inmates at correctional services. And I asked this man of God and asked him just to give a speech. And when he came, all of them. Did you see all of the guards? They were so happy to see you, because it just testifies what you're just saying, that when you go up, make sure you greet every person that you go up, because you never know if you're gonna need them when you go down.
Absolutely.
He is a true test. You are a true testimony of that, Bob.
Absolutely. You know, raising that scripture reading, you are reminding me of a book of Ephesians in chapter 6, verse 10.
Yes.
The Bible says we wrestle not against blood and flesh, but we wrestle
Powers
against the
and
principalities and the rulers of the wicked nature from high places. But God the Almighty says, put on the whole armor of God, so that you can stand firm and resist the evil ways. And the Bible breaks it down to a breastplate of salvation. It breaks it down to a helmet. That is where all the vital organs are kept. And God wants us to protect our lifestyle exactly in the same way we protect these vital organs, which makes you who you are. People can take anything and everything away from you. But wisdom from the Almighty cannot be touched. And your ability to do things cannot be taken away. They can cut the body limbs, they can take your wealth, they can take in, we have seen it in the past.
What happened to Job?
Absolutely.
What happened to Job? And God said to Job that you can take anything, Satan, but don't touch his spirit.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Take everything, but not his spirit.
There are things that are God-given that shall never be taken out of you. And I always say to people, as a point of departure, it's critical for one to be able to identify with oneself and know who you are, what you are capable of. And they always say seasons change. It does not necessarily mean that when you are up there, you will not experience difficulties or difficulties will not come your way. But the how you embrace them makes you who you are. Those that speaks the language would tell you that if it is winter today, surely summer will come.
You know that this too shall pass, in other words.
Absolutely.
You know that it can never be winter every day.
No, it can't be winter. Seasons change.
Yeah, it can't be summer every day.
That's God's creation. And God sometimes would allow the enemy camp to come to your closet for you to realize your full potential.
When you're pressed.
Absolutely.
The olive oil must be pressed so that the olive can come out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, Mr. Mdunge, last one, please share with us your family life. Your kids, you did mention two of them, your son and your daughter, your wife. Just tell us about your family structure, please.
We are such a small family structure. It's myself, my wife, who is also in the police, my daughter, Bali. She's the firstborn. She is also in the police. She's a policewoman. She's in the detective branch at Pinetown, and my son is with me in the business. Basically, those are the family. That is the family background that we have. We own properties in different areas. Which were targeted by the enemy camp, but they did not win because we still own those properties, and they're all freehold properties. So it is possible for anybody. It is possible for anybody. If Vincent Mdunge could go through all this pain and the challenges of life and still come up victorious, who may not.
Yeah.
It's just that when you look at the challenges and the difficulties that you go through, and you listen to the next person sharing their own side of the story, then you begin to realize that essentially this is nothing. This is what I've been through is next to nothing as opposed to what you hear on the side. But of course, self-belief is key. And I always say to South Africans, we are engulfed in the midst of all forms of criminality. And I always say criminality does not have a place in our society, but it is up to all of us as the society to take ownership of what is happening around us, either work like a hand in glove with the police and the community structures, and report crimes before they even occur, because some of us are fortunate to master the craft before it turns into reality. That is how the intelligence community used to function in the police. Many years ago, we had a very offensive intelligence unit. They were called the security branch. They were more up to the black people as opposed to an inclusive society. But they were highly skilled such that they would smell a fly leaving Zimbabwe coming into South Africa, and they would tell you exactly what it is carrying. Today, we are in tatters. Our intelligence community is next to nothing. That is why crime is so rife. Our borders are so wide open. It's like an open terrain for every Tom, Dick, and Harry. And that is where we need to take ownership of our land. That is where we need to take ownership of our country. That is, I always think ahead and say, what is happening between Russia and Ukraine now? What if the sword was to turn back and look into South Africa? What are we going to do? Are we going to be ready? Are we going to be able to deal with such a war situation? The answer is no. And all I'm saying, let us look back at all the good things that the apartheid regime would have come up with that are user friendly today. Take our youth, train them to use arms, train them to in terms of self-discipline, train them in terms of patronage for them to love and to die for their country. And in the absence of that, we will always be crying foul and say there is a criminal element in the country and we can't deal it simply because we can't deal with our own selves. Basically, that would be my challenge to the current dispensation, to say let's take ownership. Yes, foreign nationals are here. Some people would view them as xenophobic if you raise such issues, which is not always the case. Some of them are, of course, in the country legally. They qualify to be in the country. They are known people. They are accounted for. Therefore, we don't have qualms. But we have qualms with those that come in illegally and commit crimes in the country. And it is entirely up to us to take ownership of that and say, enough is enough. And yes, it is mandatory to the police, but there are community-oriented structures like the CPFs and the likes. So that we are able to support, because if we look at the numbers, one police officer is to look at the margin of about 100 or plus people to safeguard and to protect. And imagine...
and he's one.
Is one. And the one that has to be reactive and investigate crimes that would have occurred. You find that an investigating officer is given about 250 case dockets. Some of those case dockets are to go to court. Some of them he has to identify and arrest suspects that are linked to those crimes. Some of them have to go through the forensic science laboratories and the likes. It becomes very difficult for anybody to deal with such a massive allocation of case dockets all alone. That is why we have a failed system. That is where we are taking advantage as the private investigators, but we also need the community in general to take part and play their part as well.
Just closing remarks.
Yes.
Your youth developments, how would you, what would be your last words to the youth? Words of encouragement. You said a mouthful, but just a minute, what would you say to the youth, as they're watching?
Self-belief is key. You've got to know your identity. You've got to know who you are, where you want to go, and of course, growth academically becomes very significant in that. You must be a product that the outside world is always able to source and apply it elsewhere for you to succeed. Having said that, I want to say to the younger generation, there is nothing impossible. God has given us body limbs, strength, wisdom, and we are able. Basically, that is my message to the youth. We are all able.
They can take anything away from you, but they can never take away what God has given you, which is wisdom.
Absolutely.
So you can do whatever you want. Young person,
Absolutely.
As you're watching this, whatever you put your mind to, you can do. Mr. Vincent Mdunge, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. Thank you for your words of wisdom, of encouragement. Thank you for sharing your story to us. Indeed, you are highly favored.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mdunge, where can people find you? If, let's say, we want to get hold of you, what are your socials? Where can we get in contact with you in terms of telephonically? Please share with us.
I'm on cell number 07248257794, which is equally a WhatsApp number. My email address is mdunge.vincent1@gmail.com, and the other one is vincentmdunge@iCloud.com. The third one becomes mdunge@gmail.com. That also goes into our business. We are based in Clearwater in Marion Hill. We are also based in Molweni, just below Hillcrest. And I'm not on the other social media platforms for strategic reasons at this point. But yes, I am on WhatsApp. I am on the phone, and I can also be reached via emails.
Okay, just share your number again. So I just want to repeat it.
072
48
25
794.
Correct.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mdunge.
Thank you.
It was Mr. Mdunge that we had today. What a pleasure, what an honor, what a highly favored man of God. Once again, my name is Pastor Noxy Williams. You can reach me on my Instagram page, which is house_Calon or Noxy_Williams. My WhatsApp number 072-985-4083. Thank you so much, viewers, for tuning in. Please don't forget to subscribe, and we shall see you same time, same place next week.